100 doctors couldn't identify the boy's illness. They ran every test, tried every treatment, and still, the child grew weaker by the day. She begged for answers, but every doctor said the same thing. We don't know what's wrong. Then, his father returned from deployment. He took one look and whispered, "Stop everything. I know what this is." How could a soldier see what 100 doctors missed? What secret did he bring back from overseas? And how could it possibly save his son? Was it medicine or a miracle? Sometimes healing doesn't come from science, but from love that refuses to give up. What did the father see? And how far would he go to prove he was right? The morning light slipped through the blinds like thin fingers, painting stripes across the hospital floor. Rachel Miles sat in the same plastic chair she'd claimed as hers 6 months ago, her body folded forward, elbows on knees. The room smelled of antiseptic and something else, something stale and hopeless that clung to the walls. Eli didn't move. He lay beneath a white sheet, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths that the machines counted for him. Tubes snaked from his small arms. His face, once full of mischief and laughter, looked like wax now. 8 years old, and he weighed less than a bag of groceries. The door opened with a soft click. Dr. Patel stepped inside, his white coat crisp, his expression carefully neutral. He held a clipboard against his chest like a shield. Rachel knew that look. She'd seen it 99 times before. "Mrs. Miles?" His voice was kind but tired. "May I sit?" She nodded, though she didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on Eli's hand, so pale against the blanket. Dr. Patel lowered himself into the chair beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The machines hummed. The IV dripped. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattled past. "We've done every test, ma'am," he said finally. "Blood work, scans, biopsies. We've consulted specialists from Boston to Baltimore, and I wish I had better news, but—" He paused, choosing his words. "There's nothing left to try." Rachel's throat tightened. She'd heard variations of this speech so many times she could recite them herself. Rare case, unprecedented symptoms, no clear diagnosis. The words stopped meaning anything after the 50th doctor. "We're scheduling a final case review," Dr. Patel continued. "A panel of our best minds. It's our last effort to find something we might have missed. And if you don't?" Rachel's voice came out hoarse. Dr. Patel didn't answer right away. He looked at Eli, then back at her. "We'll make him comfortable." The words landed like stones. Rachel nodded slowly, mechanically. She'd learned not to cry in front of the doctors. They meant well, but tears made them nervous. They'd shuffle out faster, leave her alone with the machines and the waiting. "Thank you, doctor." He stood, hesitated, then rested a hand briefly on her shoulder before walking out. The door closed. Rachel stared at her son. 6 months ago, Eli had been running through the backyard, pretending sticks were airplanes, making engine noises with his mouth. He'd worn a too-big pilot's cap his father sent from overseas, the brim flopping over his eyes. He'd laughed so hard he tripped over his own feet. Then one morning at school, he'd collapsed. No warning, no explanation. Just a phone call that shattered her world. Since then, it had been a blur of ambulances and waiting rooms, insurance forms and sleepless nights. Every hospital looked the same after a while. Every doctor wore the same expression of polite defeat. She stood, her knees stiff from sitting too long, and walked to the window. The city stretched below, people moving through their ordinary lives, going to work, buying coffee, complaining about traffic. She used to be one of them. Now she lived in this fluorescent-lit purgatory, watching her son fade a little more each day. Her hand drifted to her pocket, where her phone sat like a stone. Aaron. She'd called him 17 times in the past month, left voicemails, sent emails. The military said he was unreachable, somewhere in the desert on his 4th tour, saving strangers while his own son slipped away. She wanted to be angry, Part of her was, but mostly she was just tired. Rachel walked the sterile halls, past nurses who knew her by name, past families whispering in waiting rooms. Her feet carried her to the chapel at the end of the corridor, a small, dim room with wooden pews and a stained glass window that never got enough sunlight. She sat in the back row. "Please," she whispered, "please." That was all she had left. One word, over and over, sent up into the silence. Late that night, the machines beeped their steady rhythm. Rachel sat curled in the chair beside Eli's bed, her phone glowing in her hands. She scrolled through old photos, each one a knife to the heart. Aaron in uniform, holding baby Eli against his chest. Eli's first birthday, cake smeared across his face. The three of them at the beach, before the deployments got longer, before the distance grew too wide to cross. She opened a new message, typed slowly. "Come home. We need you." Her thumb hovered over the send button, but she couldn't do it. Couldn't send one more unanswered plea into the void. Rachel set the phone down on the bedside table. She reached for Eli's hand, so small and cold, and held it gently. Then she closed her eyes and tried to pray. Dawn split the horizon like a wound, red and raw against the desert sky. The transport plane's engines whined as it taxied to a stop on the dusty airstrip. Aaron Miles stepped down onto the tarmac, his boots hitting sand-covered concrete with a hollow thud. He'd been awake for 36 hours straight. His uniform hung on him, stiff with dried sweat and dust. His eyes burned from the wind and the exhaustion that never quite left anymore. Around him, other soldiers moved in tired silence, hauling gear, trading quiet words. Aaron walked alone. In his breast pocket, folded into a small square, was Rachel's letter. He'd read it so many times the creases had worn soft, the ink smudged in places from his thumbs. 3 sentences. That was all she'd written. "He's getting worse. The doctors don't know what's wrong. Please come home." It had taken 2 weeks to reach him. 2 weeks buried in the military postal system, while his son... Aaron stopped walking, forced himself to breathe. A jeep rattled past, kicking up dust. Someone called his name, but he didn't turn. He just kept moving toward the operations tent, where debriefing waited like a final hurdle between him and home. Inside the tent, fans rattled uselessly against the heat. Colonel Stevens sat behind a folding table covered in maps and incident reports. He was a hard man with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. "Captain Miles." Stevens didn't look up from his paperwork. "Have a seat." Aaron remained standing. "Sir, I need to request emergency leave." Now Stevens looked up. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "Your tour's not up for another 3 months." "I know, sir." Aaron's voice stayed level, controlled. Years of discipline held it there. "My son is sick. Critical condition. I need to go home." Stevens leaned back in his chair. The metal creaked. "What's the diagnosis?" "There isn't one." Aaron's jaw tightened. "The doctors can't figure it out." "Can't or won't? Does it matter?" The words came out sharper than Aaron intended. He forced himself to soften. "Sir, my wife has been handling this alone for 6 months. I need to be there." Stevens studied him for a long moment. Around them, the tent hummed with activity. Radios crackling, boots scuffing dirt. Men moving with purpose. Finally, Stevens pulled a form from a drawer and began writing. 48 hours, he said. "That's all I can give you, without going through channels that'll take weeks." "I'll take it." Stevens signed the bottom of the form, then slid it across the table. "Go. I'll expedite the paperwork." Aaron took the form, his hand steady even though something cracked loose inside his chest. "Thank you, sir." "Miles," Stevens's voice stopped him at the tent flap. "Bring him home safe." Aaron nodded once, then stepped out into the blinding sunlight. The flight home stretched endless. Aaron sat squeezed into a middle seat on a commercial carrier, his duffel bag shoved beneath his feet. Around him, civilians dozed or watched movies on tiny screens. The normalcy of it felt wrong, like he'd stepped through a door into a world he no longer belonged to. He couldn't sleep. Instead, he pulled out his field notebook, a battered green thing held together with duct tape and hope. Pages filled with medical notes, sketches of field procedures, observations from treating wounded soldiers in conditions where proper medicine was a luxury. Unknown illness. Rachel's words circled his mind like vultures. He flipped through his notes, scanning entries from the past year. Respiratory distress, unexplained weakness, soldiers collapsing without warning. The symptoms had appeared sporadically among certain units, always blamed on heat exhaustion or dehydration. But Aaron had seen the pattern the doctors missed. Airborne toxin. His pen moved across a fresh page, connecting dots. Exposure routes, incubation periods, treatment protocols he'd improvised in the field when standard medicine failed. If Eli's symptoms matched what he'd seen overseas, the plane hit turbulence. Aaron's hand slipped, leaving a dark line across the page. He closed the notebook and pressed his forehead against the cold window. Below, clouds stretched white and endless. Hold on, he thought. I'm coming. The plane touched down in Virginia at sunset. Aaron moved through the terminal like a ghost, his duffel slung over one shoulder, his eyes scanning the crowd. She wasn't there. He checked his phone. No signal overseas meant no messages, no updates. He tried calling. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. Rachel's voice, bright and warm from some other lifetime. "You've reached the Miles family. Leave a message." Aaron hung up. He pushed through the terminal doors into the humid evening air. Taxis lined the curb, their drivers leaning against hoods, smoking cigarettes. Aaron raised his hand. A cab pulled up, yellow paint peeling, cracked vinyl seats. "Where to?" the driver asked. Aaron gave him the hospital's address. The words tasted like ash. The cab pulled away from the curb, merging into traffic. Aaron sat in the back seat, his duffel bag clutched against his chest, and watched the city scroll past. A place that used to be home. The automatic doors hissed open. Aaron stepped into the hospital's main entrance, his boots echoing against polished tile. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Too bright, too sterile. A nurse at the reception desk looked up, startled by the sight of him. Dust still clung to his uniform. His face was shadowed with stubble and exhaustion. "I need Eli Miles's room," he said. The nurse blinked. "Visiting hours are—" "I'm his father." Aaron's voice didn't rise, but something in it made her hands move to the keyboard without another word. "4th floor, pediatric intensive care, room 412. Aaron was already walking toward the elevators. The 4th floor was quieter. Night shift. Dimmed lights in the hallways, soft beeping from a dozen rooms where children fought battles no one could see. Aaron followed the room numbers, his heart hammering against his ribs in a way enemy fire had never managed. He stopped outside the door. Through the narrow window, he could see his son, small and pale beneath white sheets, tubes running from his arm to machines that blinked green and steady. And beside the bed, slumped in a chair too small for comfort, was Rachel. She'd lost weight. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hair, usually pulled back neat and tidy, fell loose around her shoulders. She slept with her head tipped against the chair's back, one hand reaching toward Eli's bed, as if even in sleep she couldn't stop reaching for him. Aaron pushed the door open. The hinges made a small sound. Rachel stirred, her eyes opening slowly. For a moment, she just looked at him, like he was something her exhausted mind had conjured up. Then recognition hit. Her face crumpled. "You came," she whispered. Aaron crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside her chair. "I'm here. I'm so sorry." 6 months. Her voice broke. 6 months. I've been— She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. When she spoke again, it came out raw. They don't know what's wrong with him. Nobody knows. I've taken him to 19 hospitals, 99 doctors. Tears spilled down her cheeks. And you were just gone. I got your letter 2 weeks ago. Erin reached for her hand, but she pulled back. Rachel, I came as fast as 2 weeks? She stood up, anger flashing through the grief. I sent that letter 3 months ago. Erin's chest tightened. The mail, overseas. It takes. I know how it works. Rachel wrapped her arms around herself. I know, but he needed you, Erin. He kept asking for you, and I didn't know what to tell him anymore. Erin turned toward the bed. Eli lay so still. His chest rose and fell in shallow movements. His skin was pale, almost translucent in the dim light. 8 years old. He should have been running, laughing, drawing those airplane pictures he loved so much. Tell me everything, Erin said quietly. Rachel sank back into her chair. She spoke in a flat voice, the kind that came from repeating the same story, too many times. Seizures at school, emergency rooms, specialists, tests for leukemia, for autoimmune disorders, for rare genetic conditions. Every result came back negative or inconclusive. His symptoms shifted like smoke. Respiratory distress 1 week, neurological issues the next. They say there's nothing left to test for, Rachel finished. Dr. Patel, the head physician, he says we should just make him comfortable. Erin stood and moved to the bedside. He pulled back the blanket slightly, checking Eli's arms. Thin, too thin. Then he lifted Eli's hand gently, examining the fingernails. Bluish tint at the beds. He leaned closer, studying the boy's face in the dim light. There, around his lips, a faint discoloration. Grayish-purple, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for. Has anyone mentioned toxin exposure? Erin asked. What? Rachel stood. No. They tested for poisons early on. Everything came back clean. A nurse pushed through the door carrying a tray of medications. She stopped short when she saw Erin. I'm sorry, but you can't be in here during… I'm his father. Erin didn't look up from Eli. What medications is he on? The nurse glanced at Rachel uncertainly. Broad-spectrum antibiotics. Anti-seizure medication. Steroids to reduce inflammation. Stop the steroids, Erin said. Excuse me? Erin straightened. Stop them, now. And I need activated charcoal, IV saline, and thiamine. The nurse's eyes widened. Sir, I can't just… This isn't a disease. Erin's voice stayed calm, but his hands trembled slightly as he checked Eli's pulse. This is exposure, airborne toxins. I've seen it before. That's impossible, the nurse said. We've tested… Not for the right things. Erin turned to his duffel bag and pulled out his medic kit. Battered green canvas filled with supplies that had saved lives in places where hospitals didn't exist. Rachel, I need you to trust me. Rachel stared at him. Erin, what are you… The door opened again. Dr. Patel walked in, his expression shifting from surprise to concern when he saw Erin. Mr. Miles, I didn't know you'd arrived. His gaze moved to the medic bag. What's going on? He's been exposed to a toxin, Erin said. Probably months ago. It's been accumulating in his system. Dr. Patel's expression hardened. Mr. Miles, we've run comprehensive toxicology for common poisons, street drugs, household chemicals. Erin pulled out a vial from his kit. Not for military-grade compounds. Military? Dr. Patel stepped closer. That's absurd. How would a child… Erin looked at him steadily. Because I brought it home. The room went silent. Erin's hands moved with practiced precision, drawing solution into a syringe. I've treated soldiers with these symptoms. Exposure to aerosolized compounds from contaminated equipment. The symptoms mimic dozens of other conditions. That's why you couldn't find it. You can't administer that, Dr. Patel said sharply. You don't have authority. Aaron reached up and calmly unhooked one of the monitors. The machine's alarm started beeping. He silenced it with a switch. "What are you doing?" The nurse moved forward. Aaron ignored her. He placed his hand on Eli's chest, counting respirations, checking the pattern. Shallow but regular. He pulled a small bottle from his bag, activated charcoal suspension, mixed with binding agents. "Stop!" Dr. Patel ordered. "I'm calling security." Aaron looked up. His eyes were steady, certain. "Stop everything," he said quietly. "I know what this is." Dr. Patel froze. Rachel pressed her hand to her mouth. Aaron drew the solution into a syringe and carefully inserted it into Eli's IV line. "It's a chelation compound. It'll bind to the toxins and help his body flush them out." His voice stayed calm, measured. "His pulse should stabilize in 3 to 5 minutes. You're risking his life," Dr. Patel said. "I'm saving it." Aaron kept his eyes on his son's face. "Watch." The seconds ticked past. Nobody moved. The only sound was the soft beep of the remaining monitors and Rachel's ragged breathing. Then, Eli's pulse monitor showed a change. The rhythm steadied, strengthened. Rachel gasped. Aaron checked the readout. Then Eli's breathing. Deeper now. More regular. Color started returning to the boy's lips. Just a hint, but it was there. "Oh my God," the nurse whispered. Dr. Patel stared at the monitors, his face pale. Eli's eyelids fluttered. "Eli!" Rachel moved to the bedside, her voice breaking. "Baby?" The boy's eyes opened slowly, just a crack, unfocused at first. Then they found Aaron's face. "Dad?" The word came out barely a whisper. Rachel collapsed into tears, reaching for her son's hand. Aaron leaned down and pressed his lips to Eli's forehead. His own eyes burned, but he kept his voice steady. "You're going to be okay, buddy," he whispered. "I've got you now." Eli's fingers twitched weakly against the sheets. "You came back. Always," Aaron said. "I'll always come back." Morning light crept through the hospital blinds, painting stripes across Eli's bed. Rachel pushed through the door, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. She stopped when she saw them. Aaron sat on the edge of the mattress, supporting Eli's head with one hand. The boy was awake. Actually awake. His eyes clear for the first time in weeks. Aaron held a small plastic cup to his lips. "Just a little more," Aaron said softly. "Slow sips." Eli drank, then made a face. "Tastes weird." Aaron smiled. "I know. But it'll help flush out the bad stuff." Rachel set the coffee on the bedside table, her hands shaking. "He's really better. He's getting there." Aaron lowered the cup and brushed Eli's hair back. "How do you feel, buddy?" "Tired." Eli's voice was hoarse from disuse. "But my chest doesn't hurt anymore." Rachel sat on the other side of the bed. She reached for Eli's hand, squeezing gently. "We were so worried about you." "I know." Eli looked between them. "I heard you sometimes. When you thought I was sleeping." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "You did?" "Yeah." The boy's mouth curved into a small smile. "Mom, you talk really loud when you pray." A laugh burst out of Rachel. Half sob, half relief. "I guess I do." The door opened. Nurse Helen walked in carrying fresh linens, then froze when she saw Eli sitting up. "Well, look at you," she breathed. "Aren't you a sight for sore eyes?" "Hi, Miss Helen," Eli said. The nurse set down the linens and came to the bedside. She checked his forehead with the back of her hand, then studied the monitors. "Temperature's normal. Heart rate's good." She shook her head in wonder. "This is something else." Word spread fast through the ward. By mid-morning, 3 nurses had stopped by just to see the miracle boy. A young resident asked Aaron detailed questions about the compound he'd used. An older physician simply stood in the doorway for a long moment, then nodded at Aaron before walking away. But not everyone smiled. Rachel noticed the whispers outside the door. 2 nurses huddled together, glancing into the room. Their expressions weren't warm. "Did you hear what he did?" one murmured. Just walked in and started treating the kid without any authorization. I heard Dr. Patel filed a report, the other replied. Rachel's stomach tightened. By noon, Dr. Patel himself appeared. He examined Eli thoroughly, running through standard checks. His face remained neutral. Remarkable improvement, he said finally. Truly remarkable. He looked at Aaron. Though highly irregular. Aaron stood. But he's better. Yes, Dr. Patel closed his chart. Which is why I'm not opposing your methods. However, he paused. I am required to document what happened. The hospital administration will need to review the incident. Rachel stepped forward. Review what? He saved our son's life. I understand. Dr. Patel's voice softened. And I'm grateful. But protocol exists for a reason, Mrs. Miles. Your husband administered an unapproved treatment without consultation or consent forms. I gave consent, Rachel said. He's my husband. The hospital still has liability concerns. Dr. Patel tucked his chart under his arm. I'm sorry. It's out of my hands now. He left. Aaron turned back to Eli, his jaw tight. Don't worry about it. But Rachel saw the tension in his shoulders. That afternoon, Eli ate half a bowl of broth. He laughed at one of Aaron's old army stories. He asked when he could go home. Soon, Aaron promised. Real soon, buddy. Rachel let herself believe it. For the first time in months, she imagined their life beyond these walls. Eli in his own bed. Family dinners. Normal days. The hope felt fragile as glass. At 5 o'clock, a woman in a charcoal suit appeared. She introduced herself as Ms. Green, hospital administrator. Her handshake was firm and brief. Mr. and Mrs. Miles, I need to inform you that a review board will be convened to examine the medical intervention that occurred yesterday. Rachel stepped in front of her. A review? He's getting better. Isn't that what matters? Patient safety is what matters, Mrs. Miles. Ms. Green's tone was clipped. Your husband is not a licensed physician. His actions, while well-intentioned, violated multiple hospital policies. Policies? Rachel's voice rose. My son was dying. I understand your frustration. Ms. Green didn't sound like she understood anything. But we have procedures for a reason. The board will meet in 3 days to determine if any disciplinary action is warranted. Disciplinary action against who? Aaron asked quietly. Against you, Mr. Miles. And potentially against the staff who allowed the breach. Rachel grabbed Ms. Green's arm. Please, he saved Eli's life. Don't punish him for that. Ms. Green gently removed Rachel's hand. The review will be fair and thorough. Until then, please refrain from any further unauthorized treatments. She looked at Aaron. That's not a request. She left. Rachel sank into a chair. This is insane. It doesn't matter. Aaron crouched beside Eli's bed. All that matters is you getting well. As evening settled over the hospital, the three of them ate dinner together. The first real meal Eli had managed in weeks. They talked about small things, safe things. Rachel caught Aaron watching Eli with an intensity that made her chest ache. At 8 o'clock, the nurses dimmed the lights. Rachel adjusted Eli's pillow, while Aaron pulled a chair close. Tell me the airplane story, Eli murmured, already drowsy. Aaron started talking about the cargo planes he'd flown in, his voice low and soothing. Rachel leaned back, finally letting her muscles relax. Then Eli coughed. It was sharp, violent, his whole body convulsed with it. Rachel lunged forward. Eli! The boy coughed again, harder. His face went red, then pale. The monitor beside his bed started beeping faster. Aaron's hand shot to Eli's wrist, checking his pulse. His face drained of color. Aaron? Rachel's voice cracked. Eli gasped for air between coughs. His chest heaved. Aaron looked up at Rachel, and she saw something in his eyes that terrified her more than anything she'd seen in 6 months. Fear. It's coming back, he said softly. He gripped Rachel's hand as alarms began echoing down the corridor. Morning came cold and gray. Aaron stood at the observation window, palms pressed flat against the glass. Inside the intensive care unit, Eli lay surrounded by machines again, more than before. His small chest rose and fell in shallow rhythm. 3 doctors moved around the bed. They drew blood, checked monitors, spoke in hushed voices Aaron couldn't hear through the glass. Rachel sat in a chair beside the door, staring at nothing. She hadn't slept. Neither had he. A nurse emerged from the ICU, pulling off latex gloves. Aaron straightened. "How is he?" "Stable for now." She disposed of the gloves in a red bin. Dr. Patel ordered a new round of tests. "We should know more this afternoon." "I need to see his blood reports," Aaron said, "and access to the samples." The nurse's expression shifted. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miles. After yesterday's incident, you've been restricted from medical records." "Restricted?" The word tasted bitter. "He's my son. I understand. But those are the orders." Her voice softened. "I'm sorry." She walked away. Aaron's hands curled into fists. He turned back to the window, watching doctors hook up another IV line to Eli's arm. He'd been trained to save lives, taught to diagnose under fire. And now he stood on the wrong side of glass, powerless. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, stepping away from the window. The call was from Marcus Chen, a fellow medic from his deployment. They'd served together for 2 years, saved lives side by side in dust and chaos. Aaron answered. "Marcus! Hey, man! Got your message." Marcus's voice crackled with static. "What's going on?" Aaron walked to the end of the hallway, away from listening ears. "It's my son. 8 years old. Started with respiratory problems 6 months ago. Shortness of breath, chest pain, fatigue. Then neurological symptoms. Memory loss, tremors. Jesus. Doctors can't figure it out. Ran every test imaginable." Aaron kept his voice low. "But I stabilized him yesterday using a basic detox protocol. Same thing we used on Corporal Davies after that supply depot incident." Silence on the other end. "Marcus?" "Aaron." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Davies didn't just have heat exhaustion. You know that, right?" Aaron's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "Command buried it. Classified the whole thing." Marcus paused. "But those supplies we handled? Some of them were contaminated. There was a compound, chemical residue from an improvised attack 2 weeks earlier. It stuck to fabric, gear, anything porous." Aaron's blood went cold. "What kind of compound?" "Some homemade nerve agent variant. Not strong enough to kill outright, but exposure causes respiratory failure, neurological damage, all delayed onset. 3 soldiers got sick before they figured it out. I never heard about this, because they didn't want anyone to know." Marcus's voice dropped. "They sealed and destroyed everything from that depot, sent out new gear. But if something slipped through..." Aaron closed his eyes. His mind raced back through months of memories. The duffel bag. He'd sent it home in February, filled with souvenirs for Eli, patches, a compass, a spare canteen. And something else. That old filter mask, the one he'd picked up after the depot fire. He'd thought it was clean. Just another piece of gear. "Aaron, you still there?" "Yeah." His voice sounded hollow. "I gotta go." He ended the call and started running. The drive home took 20 minutes. Aaron barely remembered it. He parked crooked in the driveway and burst through the front door. The house felt empty without Rachel and Eli. Photos lined the hallway, smiling faces from better days. Aaron took the stairs 2 at a time and yanked down the attic ladder. Dust swirled in the dim light. Boxes crowded the small space. Christmas decorations, old clothes, forgotten things. In the far corner sat a black duffel bag wrapped in plastic. His hand shook as he tore the plastic open. The bag smelled like desert sand and oil. He dumped the contents onto the floor. Patches scattered. A folded flag. The compass. And there, buried beneath a rolled T-shirt, the filter mask. It was small, olive green, the kind used for air filtration in contaminated zones. Aaron lifted it carefully, turning it over in his hands. Strange white residue clung to the rubber seal. Crystallized. Old. His stomach turned. Eli had played in this attic last spring. Rachel mentioned finding him up here once, wearing random army gear, pretending to be a soldier like his dad. Wearing this mask, breathing through it. Aaron set the mask down like it might explode. His breathing came fast and ragged. All those months away. All those missions to keep his family safe from threats half a world away. And he'd brought the danger home himself. He pulled a plastic evidence bag from his jacket. Old habit, always carrying supplies, and used a swab to collect residue from the mask's filter. He sealed it carefully, then stuffed the mask back into the duffel. His phone buzzed. Rachel? Any news? He stared at the message. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. What could he say? That he'd poisoned their son? That every breath Eli struggled for was Aaron's fault? He typed, still working on it. Be there soon. Thunder rumbled outside. Aaron looked up at the attic's small window. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, swallowing the afternoon light. He stood slowly, the evidence bag clutched in his fist. It was me, he whispered to the empty attic. I brought it here. Rain began to fall. Morning light crept through the kitchen window. Rachel sat at the table, staring at Aaron's empty coffee cup. The house felt hollow without Eli's laughter echoing through the halls. She'd woken an hour ago to find Aaron's side of the bed cold. His jacket was gone, his boots missing from the doorway, but his notebook lay open on the table. Rachel pulled it closer. The pages were filled with Aaron's tight handwriting, notes from phone calls, medical terms, chemical formulas sketched in the margins. Her eyes scanned the latest entries. Compound residue, matches Davies case, filter mask, attic storage, exposure timeline, February delivery, March symptoms begin. Her breath caught. She flipped back through earlier pages. More notes, more sketches. A crude drawing of a military duffel bag with an X marked through it. At the bottom of one page, Aaron had written in shaky letters, "My fault. I brought it home." Rachel's hands trembled. She read the words again. The gear he'd sent. The souvenirs Eli had been so excited to receive. That mask he'd worn, pretending to be a soldier like his daddy. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. All this time, she'd blamed distance, deployment, the army for taking Aaron away when they needed him most. But the real danger had come home in a box marked Love, Dad. Rachel closed the notebook slowly. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. She stood and grabbed her coat. Aaron stood in the hospital administrator's office, the plastic evidence bag in his hand. Dr. Patel sat across from him, arms crossed. Two other physicians flanked the desk, specialists who'd examined Eli weeks ago. You're saying your son was exposed to a military-grade chemical compound. Dr. Patel's voice dripped with skepticism. From a mask you sent home months ago. Yes. Aaron kept his tone steady. I've seen this before. Soldiers exposed to contaminated gear from a depot fire. Same symptoms, same progression. One of the specialists leaned forward. Mr. Miles, we've tested for every known toxin, environmental hazards, chemical exposure. There's nothing in his blood work that supports this theory. Because you're looking for the wrong thing. Aaron set the evidence bag on the desk. This compound breaks down in the body. It doesn't show up in standard panels. You need a specific test. We don't take medical direction from family members. The administrator's voice was firm, especially not ones currently under review for protocol violations. Aaron's jaw tightened. I'm trying to save my son. We all are. Dr. Patel stood. But we use science, evidence, not guesswork based on military anecdotes. This isn't guesswork. It's conjecture. The specialist gestured to the evidence bag. Even if this residue contained something dangerous, there's no proof it's related to Eli's condition. Correlation isn't causation. Aaron's hands curled into fists. So you're going to do nothing? We're going to continue treating him with proven medical protocols. The administrator stepped between them. And I'm going to remind you that any further interference will result in restricted visitation rights. Do you understand? The words hit like a punch. Aaron grabbed the evidence bag. You're making a mistake. Perhaps. Dr. Patel's expression softened slightly. But it's our mistake to make, not yours. Let us do our jobs. Aaron turned and walked out before he said something he'd regret. Rachel found him in the parking garage, sitting on the hood of their car. His head rested in his hands. She crossed her arms. They didn't listen. He looked up. His eyes were red. No. Good. Aaron blinked. What? Rachel's voice shook with anger. Because I don't need their permission to be furious with you right now. He slid off the hood, facing her. Rachel? You sent that gear home. Her words came sharp and fast. You packed that mask, put it in a box, mailed it to our son without checking if it was safe. I didn't know. You should have. Her voice cracked. You're a medic, Aaron. You know about contamination, about safety protocols, but you didn't think. You just wanted him to have a piece of you. Tears streamed down her face now. Aaron's composure shattered. His own tears came hot and sudden. I thought it was clean. I swear, I thought. His voice broke. I only wanted him to see what I do, to feel close to me when I couldn't be here. And now he's dying because of it. The words hung between them like shrapnel. Aaron's knees nearly buckled. I know. His whisper was raw. God, Rachel, I know. Every time I see him in that bed, I see what I did, what I brought into our home. He wiped his face with shaking hands. I can't fix this. I don't know how to fix this. Rachel stared at him. This strong man, this soldier, this father, completely broken. Her anger wavered. She thought of all the months alone, all the fear, all the prayers whispered in dark hospital rooms, and she thought of Aaron carrying his own weight of guilt and distance, trying to bridge an ocean with souvenirs and love. They were both drowning. Rachel stepped forward and took his hand. Then let's fix this together. Aaron looked down at their joined fingers. How? I don't know yet. She squeezed tight. But I know we can't do it apart. That night, they sat side by side in Eli's ICU room. The machines hummed their steady rhythm. Eli slept peacefully, unaware of the battle being fought for him. Rachel's head rested on Aaron's shoulder. Their hands remained intertwined between them. We'll find a way, she whispered into the dim light. Aaron nodded silently, his jaw set with quiet determination. Through the window, stars emerged from behind thinning clouds. Dawn painted the Virginia sky in shades of gray and orange. Aaron's truck rumbled down the empty highway, heading north toward the Quantico Research Annex. He'd made the call at 5 in the morning. Dr. Lang had answered on the second ring, his voice gravelly with sleep but alert. Miles? Aaron Miles from the 47th Medical? Yes, sir. Thought you were still overseas. I came home. Aaron gripped the steering wheel tighter. I need your help. Lang had agreed to meet before the facility opened. No questions asked. Now Aaron pulled into the visitor's lot as the sun crept above the tree line. The research building looked more like an old college library than a military installation. Brick walls covered in ivy, small windows set deep in stone frames. A figure stood by the entrance, hands stuffed in a worn cardigan. Aaron recognized him immediately. Dr. Lang had aged since their last encounter 3 years ago, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes, but he still carried himself with the same restless energy. Captain. Lang extended his hand. Doctor. Aaron shook it firmly. Thank you for seeing me. You said it was urgent. Lang pulled out a key card and swiped them through the security door. Something about contaminated gear? My son's dying. Lang stopped mid-step. He turned slowly. What? Aaron followed him into a dimly lit hallway. 8 years old, bedridden for 6 months. Doctors can't figure out what's wrong. He pulled the evidence bag from his jacket. Until I found this. Lang took the bag carefully, holding it up to the fluorescent lights. His expression shifted from curiosity to recognition to something darker, fear. Where did you get this? His voice had gone quiet. I sent it home. February. From the supply depot at Al-Hashim. Lang's face went pale. Jesus, Aaron. What is it? Lang didn't answer. He turned and walked quickly down the corridor. Aaron followed him through 2 security checkpoints into a small laboratory filled with vintage equipment and filing cabinets that looked decades old. Lang set the bag on a sterile counter and pulled on latex gloves. He opened it carefully, using tweezers to extract a tiny sample of the residue. He placed it under a microscope. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he cursed softly. Tell me. Aaron's voice was steady, but his hands shook. Lang stepped back from the microscope. It's compound 7 alpha. Nerve suppressor developed in the 80s for crowd control. He removed his gloves with sharp, angry movements. Caused respiratory failure in field tests. Project was terminated in '92, but it's still out there. It wasn't supposed to be. Lang opened a filing cabinet and pulled out a folder marked Classified, Decommissioned. All stockpiles were supposed to be destroyed, incinerated under UN supervision. Except they weren't. Lang spread the folder open on the desk. Inside were shipping manifests, incident reports, and photographs of corroded metal containers. In 2019, a storage depot in Kuwait caught fire. Old materials got mixed with new inventory during the evacuation. He pointed to a highlighted line. Protective gear, medical supplies, personal effects. All contaminated. All supposed to be quarantined. Aaron leaned closer. Al-Hashim? Among others. Lang flipped through pages. The army rerouted everything to avoid scandal. Some went to incinerators. Some went to... He stopped. To where? Lang's finger traced down a shipping log. Civilian donation centers. Goodwill. Salvation Army. Churches. He looked up, his eyes haunted. They sent it home, Aaron, to avoid the paperwork and the questions. Aaron's stomach turned. How many shipments? 14. Lang pulled out photocopies. 14 containers sent to relief organizations across 6 states between January and March of last year. The timeline matched perfectly. Aaron's voice was barely a whisper. How many families? I don't know. Lang closed the folder. But if your son was exposed... He didn't finish the sentence. Aaron took the folder with trembling hands. I need these records. They're classified. My son is dying. Lang studied him for a long moment. Then he walked to a copy machine in the corner and began feeding pages through. I was part of the original research team, he said quietly, as the machine hummed. Back when we thought we were making the world safer. He shook his head. I helped design that compound, tested it, signed off on production. You couldn't have known. I knew it was dangerous. Lang gathered the copies into a neat stack. I knew what it could do to human tissue, to lungs, to nerve endings. He handed the stack to Aaron. And I helped bury it when things went wrong. Their eyes met. This makes it right, Aaron said. Nothing makes this right. Lang's voice cracked. But maybe it saves your boy. Aaron gripped the papers like a lifeline. Thank you. Don't thank me. Lang turned away. Just make them listen. Rachel sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open, a notepad filled with names and numbers beside her. She'd been calling since 7 in the morning. The church donation records from last year had taken hours to track down, but the secretary had finally sent her a list of families who'd received items from the military drive. 23 names, 23 phone calls. Most went to voicemail. Some people hung up when she mentioned illness. Others listened politely, but had nothing to report. Then she reached Patricia Simmons. Fainting spells. Patricia's voice went tight. Yes. My daughter Emma. Started last spring. Rachel's heart raced. How old is she? 7. The doctor said it was anxiety, low blood pressure. They put her on medication, but Patricia paused. It didn't help much. Did you receive any donations last February? From a military relief drive? Silence. Then, a coat and some kind of bag. My husband's a veteran, so the church thought. Her voice trembled. You think that's what did it? I think it might be. Rachel wrote down Emma's name. Has she gotten worse? She's in the hospital now. They're talking about a feeding tube. Rachel closed her eyes. Another child. Another family. I'm going to send you some information, she said gently. And I'm going to ask you to get her tested for something specific. What? Nerve toxin exposure. Patricia's breath hitched. What? Just trust me. Please. Aaron and Rachel met in the hospital cafeteria that evening. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Cold coffee sat untouched between them. Aaron spread the copied documents across the table. Rachel added her notes beside them. Names, dates, symptoms. They compared everything in silence. Finally, Aaron looked up. We can prove this. Rachel nodded slowly, her eyes scanning the evidence. Then let's make them listen. Morning light crept through the hospital window, softer than it had been in days. Rachel woke with her head against the vinyl chair, her neck stiff from another night spent upright. She looked at Eli. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. Not the shallow, desperate gasps of yesterday. Not the rattling breaths that had filled her with dread for months. Just breathing. Normal breathing. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. She stood quickly, checking the monitors. Oxygen levels steady. Heart rate normal. The numbers she'd memorized through endless nights of terror were finally, where they should be. Aaron, she whispered, shaking his shoulder. He'd fallen asleep, slumped against the wall, still in yesterday's clothes. He jerked awake, instantly alert. What's wrong? Look. She pointed to the monitors. Aaron's eyes widened. He moved to Eli's bedside, placing 2 fingers against the boy's wrist. Counting. Calculating. Then he let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for days. It's working, he said quietly. Rachel pressed both hands to her chest. Thank God. The morning nurse came in for vitals check and stopped short. Well, would you look at that? She smiled. The first genuine smile Rachel had seen from hospital staff in weeks. Someone's doing better. Aaron was already gathering the lab reports from Dr. Lang, organizing them into a folder. I need to show these to administration. Now. Aaron? They need to see the proof, Rachel. We can't wait. She nodded. Go. I'll stay with him. The hospital administrator's office smelled like old coffee and air freshener. Aaron sat across from Director Helen Marsh, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, who listened without interrupting as he laid out the evidence. Shipping manifests, chemical analysis, Patricia Simmons's daughter, the timeline, everything. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. This is substantial. It's proof. It's concerning. She picked up Dr. Lang's report. You're saying military-grade toxins were distributed through civilian donation centers? Yes. And that our patient has been suffering from nerve suppression for 6 months because of contaminated gear? Yes. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached for her phone. I'm calling our toxicology department. We'll need to run specific tests to isolate the compound. She paused. This will take time, Captain Miles. We need to verify. How much time? 72 hours minimum. Maybe a week. Aaron's jaw tightened. He doesn't have a week. I understand your concern, but we can't treat based on theory alone. We need confirmation. Her voice softened slightly. What you've brought us is important. Critical, even. But we have to follow protocol. Aaron wanted to argue, to demand, to overturn the desk and force them to act. But he'd seen this before. Bureaucracy moving at its own pace while people suffered. Fine, he said. But every hour you wait, I know. Director Marsh stood. We'll move as fast as we can. I promise you that. Rachel had just finished reading to Eli when Aaron returned. She could tell by his face that the meeting hadn't gone the way he'd hoped. They're testing, he said simply. How long? 3 days, maybe more. Rachel closed her eyes. 3 days felt like an eternity. But Eli was stable now, breathing normally. That had to count for something. Then we wait, she said. Aaron nodded. He pulled a chair beside hers and took Eli's hand. The boy stirred slightly but didn't wake. For the first time in days, Rachel let herself feel something like hope. Dinner time came quietly. Rachel had gone to the cafeteria to bring back sandwiches, actual food instead of vending machine crackers. Aaron sat beside Eli, showing him pictures on his phone of the desert sunrise, the places he'd been. Eli smiled weakly. Looks hot. Hotter than you'd believe, buddy. Did you see camels? Lots of them. Eli's eyes were brighter than they'd been in months. He started to ask another question. Then his body went rigid. The monitors shrieked. Aaron's sandwich hit the floor. Eli! The boy's eyes rolled back. His limbs began to shake violently. Nurse! Aaron grabbed Eli's shoulders, trying to steady him. Rachel! The crash team burst through the door. Hands pulled Aaron back as they swarmed the bed. IVs were checked. Medications pushed. Someone shouted orders about intubation. Rachel appeared in the doorway, her face white with terror. What happened? Seizure, a nurse said. Vitals crashing. Rachel's scream cut through the chaos. Aaron! He stood frozen, watching them work, watching his son convulse, watching the numbers on the monitor plummet despite everything they were doing. A doctor he didn't recognize barked orders. He's rejecting the meds. Switch to... Already tried that. Then... Nothing's working. The words hit Aaron like bullets. Nothing's working. All his training, all his experience, all the soldiers he'd saved in impossible conditions. None of it mattered now. He was just a father watching his son die. Hours later, Eli lay still again, stabilized, but barely. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about neurological damage, about the toxin attacking his nervous system faster than they could counter it. Aaron couldn't stay in that room. He walked out through empty corridors, pushed through exit doors, and found himself in the hospital courtyard. Rain fell in cold sheets. He collapsed onto a bench, letting it soak through his clothes, his hair, his skin. What if I've already lost him? The words came out broken, a whisper to no one, to God, to the universe, to whoever might be listening. He'd fought in deserts and mountains. He'd held dying men together with gauze and prayer. He'd made impossible decisions under fire. But this was different. This was his son, and he was powerless. Inside, Rachel knelt beside Eli's bed. Her hands were clasped so tight her knuckles had gone white. She prayed aloud. Not the practiced prayers from church, not the memorized verses, just raw, desperate words. Please, please don't take him. Please give us strength. Please! The door opened. Aaron stood there, dripping wet, his eyes red. He walked slowly to her side and knelt on the cold floor. His hand covered hers. Maybe this isn't a battle I'm meant to fight alone, he said quietly. Rachel squeezed his hand, tears streaming down her face. Then let's fight it together, she whispered. In faith. Dawn light filtered through stained glass windows, painting soft colors across empty pews. The hospital chapel was silent except for the faint hum of ventilation and the gentle flicker of votive candles in red glass holders. Aaron sat in the front row, head bowed, hands clasped between his knees. Rachel knelt beside him, her fingers laced with his. Neither had slept. After the seizure, after the doctors stabilized Eli again, after the machines finally settled into their steady rhythm, they'd come here, to the one place they hadn't tried. I don't know how to do this, Aaron whispered. Rachel squeezed his hand. Neither do I. I've been to war zones. I've held men together while they bled out. I always knew what to do. His voice cracked. But this? I don't know how to save him. Maybe that's the point. He looked at her. Her face was pale with exhaustion, but her eyes held something he hadn't seen in months. Not hope, exactly. Something quieter, deeper. What do you mean? You've been trying to fix this like it's a mission, she said gently. Like if you just work hard enough, think smart enough, you can solve it. That's what I do, Rachel. That's who I am. I know. She brushed tears from her cheeks. But maybe this isn't something we can fix on our own. Aaron stared at the simple wooden cross on the wall. No decorations, no ornate carvings, just plain wood. I brought this home, he said quietly. The toxin, the contamination. I did this to him. Aaron. I should have checked. I should have known better. His shoulders shook. I spent years saving strangers, and I poisoned my own son. Rachel pulled him close, holding him as he finally broke. The tears he'd held back for days, months, years. They came now. She let him cry. When he finally lifted his head, she took his face in her hands. Listen to me, she said firmly. You didn't know. You were trying to give Eli something special. Something of yours. She wiped his tears with her thumbs. Yes, it went wrong. Yes, we're here because of it. But beating yourself up won't heal him. Then what will? Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she stood and walked to the altar. She touched the white cloth covering it, her fingers trembling. I've been angry at you, she admitted, for being gone, for missing everything, for not being here when I needed you most. Aaron started to speak, but she held up her hand. Let me finish. She turned to face him. I was angry and scared and so tired of fighting alone. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. But I realized something tonight. Watching you with Eli. Watching you try so hard to save him. What? Faith isn't surrender, Aaron. It's trust. She moved back to him, sitting down. I've been praying for months, begging God to heal Eli, to send help, to do something. She laughed softly through her tears. And then you came home, and you knew what it was. And I thought, finally, the answer. But it wasn't enough. No, she shook her head. It wasn't. Because we can't do this alone. Neither of us. She took both his hands. We've been searching for miracles through science, through medicine, through everything we can control. But maybe we need to believe in something greater. Aaron looked down at their joined hands. Rough skin, scars, wedding bands that had seen better days. I don't know if I know how. Neither do I, Rachel whispered. But we can try. Together. They knelt at the altar together. Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out the small prayer blanket, the one the church ladies had made months ago, stitched with tiny stars and crosses. She'd brought it to the hospital but never used it, too afraid it wouldn't work, too afraid to hope. Now she placed it gently on the altar. Please, she whispered, we're giving this to you. All of it. The fear, the guilt, the answers we don't have. Her voice grew stronger. We're asking for healing, not just for Eli's body, but for all of us, for our family. Aaron bowed his head. The words didn't come easily. He'd never been good at praying, never felt like he had the right ones, but he tried. I've been relying on myself, he said quietly, on what I know, what I can do. But I can't do this. He pressed his forehead to his clasped hands. I need help. We need help. Please, please guide us. Show us what to do. And if it's your will, heal our son. The candles flickered. Outside, the sun rose higher, painting the chapel in golden light. They stayed there for a long time, not speaking, just being, together. When they finally stood, Rachel folded the blanket carefully and held it close. Aaron felt different, lighter somehow, despite the exhaustion still weighing on his body. Something had shifted inside him. Not confidence exactly, but a quiet conviction. A knowing. They walked toward the chapel door together. As Aaron pushed it open, he paused. Rachel looked up at him. "I know what I need to do," he said. Evening shadows filled the hospital room as Aaron pushed through the door. He carried the prayer blanket folded over his arm, still warm from being clutched against his chest during the long walk from the chapel. The machines beeped their steady rhythm, weak but steady. Eli lay motionless beneath the thin hospital sheets, his small chest rising and falling in shallow movements. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. The IV lines snaked from his arm like tiny rivers. Aaron pulled the chair close to the bed. He unfolded the blanket, soft cotton decorated with hand-stitched stars, and draped it carefully across Eli's legs. Then he took his son's hand. The fingers were cool, too cool, so small in his calloused palm. Aaron swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. He'd sung to soldiers dying in desert tents. He'd hummed melodies to keep himself sane during endless night watches. But this song, this particular lullaby, belonged to Eli alone. It was the one Aaron sang before every deployment, the promise that he'd come home, the thread connecting father and son across oceans and war zones. Now his voice felt rusty, uncertain, but he began anyway. "Hush now, brave one. Close your eyes." The melody was simple, old, something Aaron's own father had sung to him decades ago. He'd never known all the words, so he'd made up his own. "Stars are watching. Moon will rise." His voice cracked on the second line. He cleared his throat and kept going. "I'll be here when morning comes." The door opened softly behind him. Rachel stepped inside, her eyes red from crying, but calmer now. She moved to the other side of Eli's bed, placing her hand on their son's shoulder. Aaron continued, his voice growing steadier. "Safe and warm, my little one." Rachel's lips moved silently at first. Then, barely audible, she joined him. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. Together they sang the familiar melody. The words Aaron had whispered into baby Eli's ear. The tune Rachel had hummed while rocking their son through fevers and nightmares. Nurse Helen appeared in the doorway. She didn't speak, just stood there, her weathered hands pressed together at her chest. Dr. Patel joined her moments later, clipboard forgotten at his side. The song filled the small room. Aaron watched Eli's face, searching for any sign, any flicker. Nothing changed. They reached the end of the verse and started again. "Hush now, brave one. Close your eyes." Rachel's voice grew stronger. She stroked Eli's hair with gentle fingers, the way she'd done every night before bed. "Stars are watching. Moon will rise." Aaron squeezed his son's hand softly. Then, something. A twitch. So slight, he almost missed it. Eli's fingers moved. Aaron's breath caught. He kept singing, afraid to break whatever fragile connection was forming. "I'll be here when morning comes." The heart monitor's beeping shifted, not louder, but different somehow, more regular. Rachel noticed too. Her eyes widened, meeting Aaron's across the bed. They didn't stop singing. "Safe and warm, my little one." Eli's eyelids fluttered. Just once. A tiny movement beneath the dark lashes. Nurse Helen stepped forward, checking the monitors. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes shimmered. Aaron leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're safe, son. Come back to us." Rachel's hand trembled as she continued stroking Eli's hair. "We're right here, baby. Right here." The machines beeped steadily now, stronger, more definite. Then Eli took a breath, deeper than any he'd taken in weeks. His small chest rose and fell with real force, not the shallow, desperate gasps, a proper breath. "Doctor." Patel moved quickly to the monitors, studying the readings. His brow furrowed in concentration. Another breath. Then another. Color began returning to Eli's lips. the faintest hint of pink replacing the pale gray. "What's happening?" Rachel whispered. Dr. Patel shook his head slowly. "His oxygen levels are rising. Heart rate stabilizing. Brain activity." He looked up, bewildered. "It's normalizing." "How?" Aaron asked. "I don't know." The doctor's voice was quiet. Professional detachment cracked at the edges. "There's no medical explanation. His body was shutting down an hour ago. Now it's—" He paused, searching for words. "Rallying." Nurse Helen smiled softly. "Sometimes medicine just needs faith's permission to work." Aaron looked at Rachel. Tears streamed down both their faces. "He's fighting his way back," Aaron said. Rachel nodded, unable to speak. She pressed Eli's hand to her cheek. They stood there together, hands joined across their son's body, united in silent awe as the machines sang their steady song of life returning. Morning light streamed through Eli's hospital window, painting golden squares across the freshly changed sheets. "Just one more bite, sweetheart," Rachel coaxed, holding a spoonful of oatmeal. Eli wrinkled his nose, but opened his mouth. He swallowed, then grinned. "It's gross," Rachel laughed, a sound so pure it made Aaron's chest ache. "I know, baby, but you need to eat. Can I have pancakes tomorrow?" "We'll see." 5 days had passed since that night in the chapel. 5 days since the lullaby. 5 days of watching their son come back to life one breath at a time. Dr. Patel stood at the foot of the bed, reviewing charts with an expression caught somewhere between wonder and disbelief. His neurological function is completely restored. Blood work shows no trace of toxin residue. Lung capacity normal. Brain activity normal. He set down the clipboard. "I've been practicing medicine for 23 years. I've never seen anything like this." Nurse Helen adjusted Eli's pillow with practiced gentleness. "Miracles don't need to make sense, doctor. They just need to be received." Aaron sat in the chair beside the bed, watching his son eat. Really eat, not the forced feeding tubes or the desperate sips of water. Actual food that Eli wanted. The boy's color had returned. His eyes sparkled with curiosity again. Yesterday he'd asked for his sketchbook and spent an hour drawing airplanes. "Dad?" Eli's voice was still soft, but clear. "When can we go home?" "Soon, buddy. Real soon." Rachel set down the bowl and wiped Eli's mouth. "Dr. Patel says maybe 2 more days of observation. Just to be safe," the doctor added. "But all signs point to full recovery." Full recovery. The words still felt impossible. A knock at the door interrupted them. Captain Hendricks from the military's legal office stepped inside, followed by a woman Aaron didn't recognize carrying a thick folder. "Captain Miles," Hendricks said, extending his hand. "I apologize for the interruption." Aaron stood, shaking the offered hand. "Sir, this is Agent Morrison from the Army's Environmental Safety Division." Hendricks gestured to the woman. "She has news regarding the investigation." Agent Morrison opened her folder, pulling out several documents. "Captain Miles, we've completed our analysis of the gear you submitted. The residue contained traces of GB variant nerve agent, a compound used in improvised chemical attacks overseas." Her voice was professional but not unkind. "Cross-referencing shipment records, we confirmed that contaminated supplies were mistakenly routed to civilian donation centers in 3 states, including Virginia." Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. "Your son's illness matches documented cases of low-level exposure." Morrison continued. "Your identification of the toxin source likely prevented additional casualties. The military will be issuing a formal apology and initiating a full recall of affected materials." Aaron's throat tightened. "And the investigation into my treatment methods?" "Dismissed entirely," Hendricks said firmly. "You acted within the scope of your medical training under emergency circumstances. Furthermore, your actions directly led to discovering a serious safety breach." He paused. "You're being commended, not charged." The weight Aaron had been carrying lifted suddenly. He exhaled slowly. "There's more," Morrison added. Local news outlets have requested interviews. The story's generating significant interest. Soldier saves, son when doctors couldn't. That sort of thing. Rachel laughed, the sound half joy and half disbelief. We're going to be in the news? Already are, ma'am. Morrison pulled out a newspaper clipping. This ran in the morning edition. Rachel took it, scanning the headline. Her eyes filled with tears as she read aloud. Combat medic's intuition solves medical mystery, saves 8-year-old's life. She looked at Aaron. They're calling you a hero. I'm just his dad, Aaron said quietly. You're both, Nurse Helen said from the corner, smiling. After the officials left, the room fell into comfortable quiet. Eli played with his toy airplane, a new one Rachel had brought from home. He made soft, whooshing sounds, flying it through imaginary clouds. Aaron watched him, still amazed that this was real, that his son was here, alive, laughing. Dad? Eli set down the plane. Yeah, buddy. When you sang to me, the boy's voice grew thoughtful. I heard you. Even when I couldn't move or open my eyes, I heard you singing. Aaron's vision blurred. He moved to sit on the edge of the bed. You did? Eli nodded seriously. It sounded far away, like you were calling me home from really far away. But I knew it was you. Rachel pressed her fingers to her lips, tears spilling over. Aaron pulled his son into a gentle hug, careful of the remaining IV line. That's because love travels farther than any medicine, Eli. It goes places science can't reach. Is that why I got better? I think so. Yeah, I think that's exactly why. Eli hugged him tighter. I'm glad you came home, Dad. Me too, son. Me too. 2 mornings later, Aaron signed the discharge papers while Rachel packed Eli's things into a small duffel bag. Ready? Aaron asked. Eli bounced on his heels, wearing real clothes for the first time in months. So ready. The nursing staff gathered in the hallway as they left, offering hugs and well wishes. Dr. Patel shook Aaron's hand firmly. Take care of that boy. Every single day, Aaron promised. They walked through the automatic doors together. Fresh morning sunlight washed over them, warm and golden. A light breeze carried the scent of cut grass and spring flowers. Eli stopped, tilting his face toward the sky. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Aaron lifted his son into his arms, something he'd dreamed of doing for months. Eli was light, still too thin, but alive and whole. Feel that? Aaron whispered. The wind? Yeah, the wind. Eli smiled, eyes still closed. It feels like flying. Rachel stood beside them, one hand on Eli's back and the other clasped in Aaron's. Tears streamed down her face as she smiled through them, watching the morning light catch in her son's hair. 3 weeks later, the Miles family stood at Riverside Airfield, a small private strip used mostly for weekend pilots and flight lessons. Aaron's unit had organized a welcome home celebration, something simple but meaningful. Folding tables lined the tarmac, covered with red and white checkered cloths. A banner stretched between 2 posts. Welcome home, Captain Miles. Eli clutched a paper airplane he'd folded that morning from one of Aaron's old medical charts. The crease marks were perfect, each fold precise. He'd watched a YouTube tutorial 3 times to get it right. Can I throw it now? Eli asked. Rachel smoothed his hair. Let's wait until after the speeches, okay? Okay. The boy fidgeted with the plane, running his thumb along the sharp nose. Across the airfield, soldiers from Aaron's unit mingled with townspeople. Nurses from the hospital chatted with Army medics. Dr. Patel stood near the refreshment table talking with Captain Hendricks. A small crowd of reporters gathered near a makeshift podium. Cameras sat on tripods. A woman from the local news station adjusted her microphone. Aaron stood off to the side, uncomfortable with the attention. He wore his dress uniform, the fabric crisp and formal. Rachel had pressed it herself that morning while he'd made pancakes for Eli. The pancakes he'd promised weeks ago. You ready for this? Rachel asked, stepping beside him. Not really. Aaron tugged at his collar. I'm better at fixing people than talking to them. You'll be fine. She squeezed his hand. Just speak from the heart. Captain Hendricks approached the podium, tapping the microphone twice. The conversations quieted. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out today. The crowd shifted closer. We're here to honor Captain Aaron Miles, Hendricks continued. Not just for his service overseas, but for his actions here at home. His quick thinking and medical expertise saved his son's life when conventional medicine had run out of answers. Polite applause rippled through the gathering. More than that, Captain Miles identified a serious safety breach that prevented harm to other families. His dedication to both duty and family represents the very best of what we stand for. Hendricks gestured toward Aaron. Captain, would you like to say a few words? Aaron walked to the podium slowly, his boots crunching on gravel. Rachel watched him go, pride swelling in her chest. He stood before the microphone, looking out at familiar faces and strangers alike. The reporters leaned forward, pens ready. Thank you all for being here, Aaron began. His voice was steady but quiet. When I came home and saw my son fighting for his life, I did what any father would do. I used the skills I had, the training I'd been given. He paused. But that's not what saved him. The crowd grew still. What saved Eli? Aaron's voice thickened. What saved him was something I couldn't prescribe or inject or diagnose. It was prayer. It was faith. It was my wife's unwavering belief that God wasn't finished with our story yet. Rachel's eyes brimmed with tears. I spent years on battlefields patching wounds, stopping bleeding, saving lives through sheer determination. Aaron looked down at his hands. But this was different. This wasn't a battle I could win with my hands alone. I had to fight it on my knees. The reporters stopped writing, simply listening. So I want to thank this community, not for celebrating me, but for surrounding my family with prayer when we needed it most. Aaron's gaze swept across the crowd. Healing comes from the heart as much as from the hands, maybe more. I know that now. He stepped back from the podium. The applause that followed was different this time. Not polite, but genuine. Several people wiped their eyes. Rachel met him halfway, wrapping her arms around him. Perfect, she whispered. Eli tugged on Aaron's sleeve. Can I throw it now? Aaron laughed, the sound light and free. Yeah, buddy, now's perfect. They walked together to an open space on the tarmac, away from the tables and crowd. Rachel followed, standing a few steps back to watch. Eli held the paper airplane carefully, examining the wings one last time. Will it fly high? Only one way to find out, Aaron said. The boy cocked his arm back and threw the plane with all his strength. It caught the wind immediately, soaring upward in a smooth arc. The white paper gleamed against the blue sky, climbing higher and higher. Eli jumped, clapping his hands. Look, it's really flying. Aaron knelt beside his son, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. They watched the plane together as it drifted toward the clouds. You know what, Eli? Aaron said softly. What, Dad? Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought on your knees. Eli tilted his head, thinking. Like praying? Exactly like praying. The paper airplane caught an updraft, spiraling higher until it became a tiny white speck against the endless blue. Then it disappeared completely, swallowed by sunlight and sky. Rachel stood behind them, one hand over her heart. She thought of the 100 doctors who'd tried and failed, the endless tests that revealed nothing, the machines that beeped through sleepless nights. They couldn't name it, she thought, because it wasn't an illness at all. It was a test, and love was the cure. She watched her husband and son standing together in the sunshine, whole and healed, and finally home. And she knew, deep in her soul, that miracles weren't about understanding. They were about believing. I hope you enjoyed that story. Make sure to like and subscribe so that you do not miss out on tomorrow's story. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy.